Hi guys, and welcome to another episode of Kabir Considers. In this video, I'm going to react to 13 things about the USA that I just cannot get used to. So this is from the perspective of, her name is Feli, and she's from Germany. So I believe she's lived in the States for some time now. And, you know, between Germany and the US, there's probably a ton of differences, even though there's probably a lot of similarities too, just subtle things here and there. It's going to be interesting to see what she brings up, whether it's going to be the things that we've spoken about quite a lot, like tipping and stuff like that, or if it's going to be more sort of subtle things that you wouldn't really guess off the bat, but if you spent most of your life in Europe and then you go to the States, they'd be quite apparent. It's going to be interesting to see what she has to say. Let's find out.
I've been living in the US for 5 years now, but there are still things about living here that I just can't get used to, no matter how hard I try. Hello, servus, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Felicia. I'm originally from Munich, Germany, but I've been living here in Cincinnati, Ohio, on and off since 2016. Since August 13th, 2016 to be precise, which means that this year marks my 5-year anniversary of living in the US, and for that occasion, I thought it's time to reflect on a few things.
And to be fair, after 5 years, you would have a pretty solid sort of like amount of experience in a country. 5 years is a long time.
So I made a list of things about the US that I really can't live without anymore at this point, which I released about 3 weeks ago on the actual anniversary on August 13th. Check it out here.
Air conditioning. To be fair, I'm so jealous of you guys in the States. We have no air conditioning here, not even in restaurants. It's ridiculous, like, because it's quite a cold country. But we're getting really hot summers now, so it's like you just sit there in a restaurant or on the train, you're like
here if you haven't seen it yet. And I also made a list of things about living here that even after all this time, I just can't get used to. And that's what I'll talk about today. So in a way, this is the more critical, whiny, first world problems complaining counterpart to the other video. Before in the US that I have a hard time getting used to. Number one is something that's been bothering me literally since day one, and it has to do with showers. I've mentioned this before in my video on housing differences, but in Germany, a shower usually looks like this or this. The shower head usually has a hose attached, and you can either put it into a fixture and
Is that not how your showers look in the States?
Just stand underneath, or you can also grab it and move it around. So in Germany, we use so-called handheld shower heads usually. In the US, however, the standard that you'll find at most houses, rental places, and hotels is this. A fixed shower head where the pipes are built into the wall. You can usually move the angle of the shower head a little bit, but that's about it. And my question is, why, America? Do you know how hard it is to clean a shower when you can't move the shower head? A shower should be one of the easiest things to clean because it already has a drain and water in it.
She has a point there, because if you can't move that shower head, you've basically got to get a sponge with some soap, basically reach up, wipe the shower. If you're not quite tall, you're going to struggle to get up there. And then you've got to get water from the shower and then pour it over it. It makes it quite awkward. Here in England, most houses that have showers have the fixed one that you've got, but also a handheld one on the side, so you've got the choice of what to use.
And yeah, in Germany with a handheld shower head, cleaning a shower is really easy because you can just flush things away, but not here. Which is why I've been wondering for 5 years, how do Americans clean their showers? And when you build a place yourself, why do you choose a fixed shower head over a handheld one?
That's a good point.
I can't think of a single advantage. Handheld shower heads are also amazing for when you want to shower but don't want to get your hair wet, or for when you just want to shave your legs real quick, or when bathing a baby or child. Now, of course, I know that you can buy handheld shower heads in the US, but I personally can't remember seeing one in an actual bathroom throughout the whole time I've been here. The second point I've mentioned before in my
I genuinely think having a handheld one in addition to a fixed one is the way to go.
Video about 7 surprising everyday differences, and one of those surprising things for me was that people in the US don't use WhatsApp. I mean, it exists,
What?
Some people use it, but many Americans haven't even heard of it, and unlike in Germany, and frankly most other parts of the world, it's not the default for texting in the US. Instead, text messages are. SMS, which have basically been extinct in Germany for like 5 to 10 years at this point.
The thing with SMS, we used to send SMS a lot. Like, it's just not really safe. It's not encrypted. It's quite easy to hack into your texts. Like, whereas WhatsApp is quite high level encryption. I think it's like a 265-bit level encryption. Really, really hard to break into. And it's just easy to do things like group messaging and, you know, group FaceTime stuff and stuff like that.
Now, I'm not sponsored by WhatsApp, and of course there are also other messenger apps like Signal or Threema, but I really do wish that this wasn't the case sometimes, because the features that you get with text messages simply aren't as good as the ones you get on WhatsApp. Now, most Americans have iPhones, so usually texting means using iMessage, which is when the message appears blue instead of green on an iPhone.
But then if your friends, some of them don't have an Apple iPhone, they're not gonna get some of the functionality that people with iPhones get with iMessage. Like if you send, you know, the custom emojis and stuff, I don't know if the other person would get it on their phone if it's not an iPhone.
That means that you basically are using a messenger service in a way, because the message will be sent through the internet and not through regular cellular service. But even that doesn't offer a lot of features. As someone who was used to having all one-on-one and group chats taking place on WhatsApp before I came here, I was really annoyed by how complicated group texts can be here, especially when one or several members of the group chat don't have an iPhone. When I first arrived here, a lot of my fellow students used another app, GroupMe, specifically for group chats because of this.
Really?
In addition to that, the search function is pretty bad compared to WhatsApp, and so is the overview of photos and other media you've sent, the feature to save messages, and most importantly, voice messages. I know that not everyone uses that feature, but I personally use that a lot, especially with my friends in Germany, kind of instead of calling each other. You can send voice messages with iMessage, but the feature really sucks compared to WhatsApp. You can't move the cursor while listening. When you record, it'll just break off the recording if anything pops up on your phone or your screen goes black. Plus, on WhatsApp, you can now even listen to the voice message at different speeds. Now, before you guys start commenting, I know that WhatsApp is owned by Facebook, and there might be valid concerns about using it, but at the same time, I see Americans posting 100 pictures of their family dinner on social media every weekend without even thinking about privacy at all. So when Americans say that that's why they don't use it, I always find that argument a little weird. And yes, other countries have texting flat rates as well and use WhatsApp anyways. So all in all, even after 5 years of living here and after switching from Android to iPhone, pretty much just to make it easier for myself to text in the US, I still find it hard to get used to using text messages.
Like, before I had WhatsApp, I was a skeptic as well. I thought, you know, how could this be better than what I've already got, blah, blah, blah. But genuinely, it is a lot better. It's probably the best way of messaging people. It just has so many features. And it sounds like I'm sponsored by them. I'm obviously not sponsored by WhatsApp. Wish I was, but yeah, it definitely, when you try it for like a month or so, it's definitely better.
Instead of a more convenient messenger service like WhatsApp. Point number 3 is the lack of a deposit system here. To this day, I cringe a little bit every time I throw a can or a bottle away instead of collecting it and returning it to the store. Even if I throw it into a recycling bin, it still kind of feels like a trash can. It also took a while for me to get used to crushing the cans like this, which you should do here because obviously it saves space in the bin, but in Germany, that's a big no-go because you need the barcode on the bottle or can to be legible when you return it to get your deposit back. For context, I should explain that in Germany, we have the Pfandsystem, a deposit system on certain glass bottles, plastic bottles, and drink cans, where you get 8 to 25 cents back when you return them to the store. So basically, really every German household has some spot where they collect empty bottles and cans. Sometimes it can become a pretty big pile.
That's really cool. As far as I'm aware, we don't have that here. We might, but I'm not sure. I think that's a really cool little system there.
And then you just take them to the store next time you go get groceries and put them in this returning machine and you'll get money back for it. Some states in the US do have a deposit system too, but the incentive isn't quite as high to actually go and return things. Plus, I believe that in most cases you have to go to a recycling site to return them rather than just going to any store.
And I imagine a recycling site is going to be, you know, quite far away. It's not going to be as convenient as going to the nearest Walmart
Here in Ohio, they don't have a deposit system at all though. The city of Cincinnati at least offers a recycling service, which is good. So everyone has a landfill trash can and a recycling one here that get emptied once a week. And you just put all different kinds of recyclable materials into the recycling can together. Which is also kind of weird for me still, because in Germany, we usually separate our recyclables by material and put it into different bins. Or for certain things, we even have to bring it to recycling containers ourselves. So long story short, it's still weird for me to throw a plastic bottle, or even worse, a glass bottle, away instead of rinsing it out and collecting it somewhere. But I did actually kind of get used to crushing cans, because I now sometimes catch myself do it when I'm in Germany out of habit, which sucks because, as I said, you need the barcode to be working in order to get your money back.
Do you guys recycle, like you guys who based in North America or anywhere in the world, do you guys recycle a lot of your, used cans, used glass jars and stuff like that? I think we need to do more. It's good what we're doing, but I think we need to do more, like especially things like single-use plastics, because so much plastic ends up in landfill. And I think it takes like 1,000 years for plastic to start to deteriorate, maybe even longer.
I know this is a total cliche point, but even after 5 years of living in the US, I still can't really get used to the low quality of bread and dairy products here. I know this might sound a little snobbish, but I just really miss good bread that has an actual crust. And I miss good cheese, especially mozzarella. I still haven't found good mozzarella here. Even the ones in the deli section for like $10 taste like rubber, whereas real mozzarella is fluffy and airy. Same goes for yogurt and butter. Good butter is hard to find here, and so is...
Really? Really? No way. There must be places in the US, but I guess because she's restricted to like Ohio, Cincinnati, like places like Whole Foods, don't they do really good sort of like healthy food and stuff in there? Like where would be the place to get like really good quality, food, like grocery stuff?
Good creamy yogurt, and quark doesn't really exist here at all. So yeah, this is a total first world problem. I'm aware of that, but this whole video really is. But it's still something that is hard to get used to for me. The next thing on my list of things about the US that I can't get used to even after 5 years is people overdoing it with air conditioning. Okay, that's partly a lie because I actually have gotten used to it in a way. When I first came here, I got sick from the AC all the time. And for those of you who think that you can't get sick from AC, I'm gonna put a link to a recent podcast episode in the info box below where we talked about that. And I might also link an article down below. But back to the topic, I was just not used to it being so cold inside here everywhere that I was sick a lot in the beginning. And mind you, I arrived in the middle of August. So it was really hot in Cincinnati, but I always wore long pants and carried a sweatshirt with me wherever I went because I knew that anytime I'd be inside somewhere, I would be freezing. And even though I still bring a cardigan with me in the summer, I can definitely tell that my body has gotten used to it a little.
I think I would enjoy this personally because I'm always hot. So I think I would enjoy the AC. But then again, maybe there are times where you don't need it on full blast. But I'm sure, most of you guys in the States in winter and spring probably don't use AC in your houses. It's just when it's really hot outside, right?
I'm just not as sensitive to the cold and the temperature differences anymore. I don't think I've gotten sick from AC in years at this point, which is awesome, but I still don't like it when I basically have to put on winter clothes inside because someone sets the AC to a freezing temperature. I know I also kind of mentioned this in the last video, but why not just set it to a normal room temperature? In the summer, that'll still be so much colder than the outside anyways. This doesn't only apply to people's homes, by the way, but also to stores and businesses. I'm often inside a store shivering in the summer. Another thing that I have a hard time getting used to in this regard is when people use their central air conditioning all year round, even during fall and spring, where the temperature is perfectly nice outside, at least here in Ohio. Just open your windows, people. Yes, this really shows that I'm German, because Germans are known for being obsessed with Lüften, airing out rooms. I complained about this one in one of my very first videos, but even after 5 years, my opinion on this hasn't changed, and it's about American washers, or to be more precise, top-loading washing machines, which I found to be much more common here than front-loaders. In Germany,
yeah, here in the UK, I've not seen one of these before here in the UK. Everybody has one of these.
It's the other way around. Now, I've never bought my own washer in the US. I've always had one in my rented apartment or a coin-operated shared one in the basement or something like that. So yes, I know that if you buy one yourself, you obviously have the choice. But most households I've been to and all of the rentals I've lived in had a top-loading washing machine, and in my opinion, they're just not nearly as good as the front loaders that I know from Germany. It might have to do with the differences in laundry detergents as well, but front loaders, in my experience, just get your clothes so much cleaner. Plus, in Germany, you can choose the actual temperature that your clothes are going to be washed on in degrees, whereas in the US, washers usually just say hot, cold, or warm, and I believe that they just use the hot or cold tap water instead of bringing it to that exact temperature. And the spiral thing in the middle has damaged some of my clothes before too, so when it comes to washers, I'll always prefer the German ones. If a Miele front loader doesn't get it clean, nothing will.
Yeah, I've never, because I have not used a top loading one before, I can't really speak to one being better than the other. But yeah, like the only washing machine I've ever seen in life has been the one with the circle, the one that she sees in Germany. And they do a good job.
Another thing that I still can't get used to in the US is feeling unsafe at times. For one, this has to do with me living in a city rather than a suburb or rural area, and it also has to do with gun violence in this country. I've talked about my views on gun control before, and I'm not going to go into detail about that here, but it was a huge change for me, and frankly still is, that I always have to think about where I can and can't go in a city. Like whether I can go outside after dark, or whether I can safely walk home from a bar, or when I visited Chicago a few weeks ago, for example, where I can and can't go as a tourist. I'm not trying to talk about why these things are different in Germany and the US and what could be done to change the situation, but fact is that in American cities, there's generally a lot more poverty as well as violence and crime than in German cities. For example, United Nations statistics show that the homicide rate for the year 2018 per 100,000 inhabitants was at 4.96 in the US, while it was at 0.95 in Germany. So in the US, it's almost 5 times as high as in Germany. Now, Cincinnati surely isn't...
I mean, 5 per 100,000. I don't know, is that a lot? I mean, any death is bad, but is 5 people in 100,000 a lot? I don't know.
Chicago or Detroit or New York City. But in some years, it has been listed among the top 20 most violent cities in the US, with the current homicide rate being at about 19 per 100,000 people. So more than 3 times the national average. Which doesn't mean that crime is something I personally see in everyday life here. But before I came to the US, I never had to take shelter because there was an active shooter around, for example. And this happened several times while I went to college here, that there was an active shooter alarm that went out to all students, and one time I was actually on campus during that time and locked myself up in a classroom together with a fellow student. Unlike him, I had never had any kind of training for a situation like that. Luckily, he did, because American students usually get prepared for these scenarios in school. I also have a lot of friends who have been...
That's wild. I've never in my life experienced anything like that. As someone, you know, from outside the US, it would be quite a scary thing because you don't know where that person could be. They could be anywhere.
Attacked or robbed while walking on the streets at night here. And just a few weeks ago, I was out on a walk at like 10 p.m., which is like the only time it doesn't feel like a sauna outside in the summer. And I wasn't in a particularly dangerous area, but the next day, I found out that there was an armed robbery on the very street I was on at around the same time I was there too. I must have just missed it, but I found out the next day that the girl's phone and car keys were stolen, and then they took her car. Long story short, what I'm trying to say is that it's hard for me to get used to the fact that I can't just go outside at 10 p.m. without having concerns. Just to put this into perspective, I bought pepper spray just a few weeks after I first came to the US. I never had that before, and during my 3 weeks home in Munich just now, I went on several walks, even later at night, and I didn't even bring my pepper spray to Germany. I also took my bike through the woods at night like I used to growing up. I used to always take the subway home late.
I mean, this isn't to say that, you know, Europe is this utopia where crime doesn't happen and, you know, armed robberies don't happen and stuff like that, but I don't know, it does seem that maybe you have to be a lot more vigilant in the States or in some parts of the States, maybe. Just based on, you know, her and other people who have moved from Europe to the States. But this could be at the same time, I could move to the States and I maybe would never feel unsafe. I don't know. It all depends on personal circumstances, where you've moved to.
At night all by myself too, and never had to worry. So even after 5 years of living here, it's hard for me to get used to the idea that I'm limited in my freedom in a way. This one probably makes me sound like a broken record because I've talked about this in several videos already, and even in my recent one about 10 things I had never done before coming to the US. But if this doesn't belong on a list of things that I can't get used to, I don't know what does. The American banking system. I'll keep it short this time, but I just can't get used to the fact that bank transfers aren't really a thing here, but instead you have to use a third-party service to transfer money from your bank account to another one.
What? No. So if you wanted to send money to me, you couldn't just go into your banking app on your phone and just put in my bank details and just send it through your bank's app. You would have to use I think you guys use Venmo and the Money app or something. What's it called? PayPal. Like, you can't just transfer money via your bank's app. That's crazy.
Like when you're paying for rent or just paying a friend. In Germany, for paying utilities, or as I said, paying a friend or rent, or really any other kind of service.
Or maybe you can do this now and this video is a bit outdated.
Any kind of bills, we just send money from bank to bank. Well, here, that's not very common and sometimes doesn't even really work. As I said, you'll usually have to go through another service like Zelle, for example, to do that. And I even had to get approval from my bank first before I could transfer any money. Americans, therefore, often just use services like Venmo or PayPal to make payments, which means that you have to connect your bank account to an additional service and cover potential fees. Many Americans also choose to do this because they think that bank transfers and giving out your account number isn't safe. Whether that's true or not, I don't know, but it's a pretty common concern here.
I mean, like, as long as they don't have your long card number, and your expiry date and your security code, if they can't really do anything, can they? Like, if with your sort code and account number, they can't really do anything apart from pay money in.
On top of that, people still use checks in the US, which seems pretty archaic from a German perspective. I have several friends who go to the ATM regularly to deposit a physical paycheck. Why do people have to waste their time with that in the 21st century? That hasn't been a thing in Germany my whole life. The next point on my list is how normal it is in the US not to believe in facts. I know this might be a little controversial for some people, and this might be more of a recent development in the US, but ever since I first came here, I've been very surprised how, wherever you go, people sometimes say things like, I don't believe in climate change, or I don't believe in the gender pay gap, I don't believe in evolution, or of course, most recently, I don't believe in COVID. You'll hear that even from very educated people sometimes, and what's so weird about that to me is that in the society I'm from, facts are not a matter of belief. Religion sure is, but hard scientific facts are not. You don't get the privilege to just not believe in a fact just because it's uncomfortable. Science isn't about believing, it's about forming our opinions and strategies based on a rational analysis of the information and evidence we have at the time. Science never claims to be 100% right. Of course, the current state of research on evolution can't explain every last thing yet. Of course, scientists change their statements about COVID over time. That's how it works. But it's still the most rational way of creating knowledge. You base it on all the evidence and facts that you have, and when new ones come out, you integrate those and adapt the state of research and potentially also your course of action based on that. Now, I'm not saying that everyone has to be on the same page as me, but overall, I would say that this pretty much reflects the standard view in German society, and growing up there, I've never...
Yeah, I do, I agree with her personally, but I think it's weird, I too think that you should, things that are like proven by science, it is what it is. You kind of just have to, that's the reality of the situation. But if somebody doesn't want to accept something, I guess it's down to them. I can't really force somebody to accept something that I believe to be true and science believes to be true, because that person still has their own free will. So it's weird. I kind of agree with her, but at the same time, I still respect other people if they choose to, believe things or not.
Never experienced it as a normal thing for people to just not believe in certain things. That's something that I still find hard to get used to in the US. The next point is expensive groceries and cosmetics. Now this is a pretty specific Germany versus USA thing because groceries are exceptionally cheap in Germany compared to other European countries, but the US really is extremely expensive in this sense. As a German, it's hard to wrap my head around the fact that as a low-income person in the US, it often makes more sense financially to get fast food and takeout rather than buying groceries at the store. A normal trip to the grocery store with like half a cart full of things for the next week or two easily costs me like $90 to $100 at a store like Kroger or Walmart, which is where the average American goes to get their groceries. Fortunately though, the German discounter supermarkets Aldi and Lidl have locations in the US too, which is why I personally get most of my groceries at Aldi, where I pay about $60 for the same things. I only go to Kroger.
And I think these prices are probably out of date as well. You know, over the last couple of years, even in the UK, the cost of food has just skyrocketed. Like my food bill used to be at the grocery store, maybe £50. Like this was maybe pre-2020, so pre-COVID. Now we're talking like it's almost £100. Like it's almost doubled in 3 years.
For certain items that they don't sell at Aldi, but every time I go to the store and see a small bag of almonds sold for $10 or a small box of strawberries for $5, I'm like, damn, I'll never get used to that. The same goes for cosmetics like face wash, makeup remover, or face lotion, for example. I've told you guys this before, but I actually still use products from the German drugstore DM for that, because even though I really tried to find good makeup remover and face lotion in the US, I failed. They were all like $7 per bottle, and none of them were as good as the products from DM for like €1. And I know that many other German expats, even in other countries, have the same experience here. Another one about houses is that even in modern houses, it's pretty common in the US to have 2 handles for hot and cold water at the sink, rather than having a mixer tap like you'll find it at most modern German homes. I don't quite understand why the mixer taps aren't more common here, because they're just so much more practical. I noticed this one especially whenever I come back from a trip to Germany, but I'm always kind of aware of it in the back of my mind.
Why is that? Like, why in the States do you typically not have a mixer tap? Is it just because, is there like certain mechanical reasons, the way your pipes are sort of laid out in the kitchen, or is it purely an aesthetic thing? People just want to have 2 separate taps.
There is a huge amount of trash and plastic in this country. People here get takeout all the time, and every meal leaves a huge pile of packaging waste behind. Many people use disposable dishes, even at home, because they don't want to clean their actual dishes. And people don't bring their own shopping bags to the store, but instead get piles of plastic bags every time they get groceries, at least here in the Midwest. Coming from Germany, where way more people try to at least avoid waste when it's not necessary, and where you have to pay for plastic bags at the store, and where plastic straws and other single-use plastic products have been banned now, it's just hard to get used to that sometimes, especially knowing that most of this trash is totally avoidable. And last but not least, even after 5 years, I still find it weird how big of a deal alcohol is here. I mean, I'm from a country where alcohol is part of our culture, where you can legally drink beer and wine at 16 and hard liquor at 18, while here in the US, not only can people not drink legally until they're 21, but there's also—
Which is crazy, because you can, I think, join the army at 18, can't you? You can join the army at 18, but you can't go to the pub and have a drink until 21. That, to me, is a bit weird, isn't it?
also such things as dry counties, for example, where you can't buy alcohol anywhere. Or so-called moist counties, where you can get alcohol only at certain places or for certain occasions. And it's also still weird to me how stores need a liquor license to sell alcohol, and you often have to go to a separate liquor store to get it, even just beer sometimes. And it's also still weird to me and a little sad that drinking in public is illegal. That means no beer by the river after you get off work, no drink while walking to a party, no playing beer pong at the park, and there's not a lot of curbside dining because of that either, because restaurants have to have a designated area if they want to do that. And even after 5 years, I still sometimes forget about this and accidentally have a drink in my hand outside, or I walk into a store looking for the alcohol section and then realize, oh, they don't sell that here. And that was the last point on my list of 13 things that even after 5 years in the US.
Very interesting video. I agree with a lot of what she said. However, I do think that when you're born outside of the US and you spend most of your life, outside of the US, you get used to your home country's way of doing things, the culture, the way of life there. So when you move to the US, even though people who are born and raised in the US are equally as happy with their system, because they're used to it too. Like, that's just how things are. Like, I think human beings, we're prone to sort of like comfort zones, like things that we're used to, we like familiarity and stuff like that. Very, very interesting video though. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.